So module 1, homework 2 is going to be about solving inequalities. So when solving inequalities, you're not using equal sign. You're going to use inequality signs. And depends on what type of inequality you're using, it will determine whether you need to use parentheses or brackets. If you're using inequalities that have equal, means that you're going to have the values that are in the inequality that are included, and to tell the reader that the values are included, you're going to need to use brackets. And if the inequalities don't have equal signs, just like these ones, you're going to need to use parentheses to tell the reader that the values are not included. And the one thing that you need to know and always keep in mind is that infinity, positive or negative, are not values. So if they are not values, they will never be included in an interval. Now let's see some examples of how to represent an inequality on a number line and how you would give it in interval notation. So we have these examples. It says put in interval notation and draw a graph of each inequality. So I have x that is greater than or equal to 4. Now, if you look at the number line, you have a number that a line that the center is 0 and it goes on both sides. Now, you know on the left side of 0, which is this area, you're going to have negative numbers. And on the right side of 0, which is this area, you're going to put all the positive numbers. Now, since you know, according to this inequality that is given to me, x, the variable, which is the every values possible, all values possible, will be greater than 4. That will be all the numbers that are on the right side of 4. So the numbers are greater than 4 if, let me say that this is 4, because it should be on the right side of 0. X can be all the values that are on the right side of 4, because they should be greater, but it include 4 as well. Why should it include 4? Because it says or equal. That means x can be either greater than 4 or equal 4. If they did not have the equal, then it could not be a 4, but it can be anything greater than 4. But in this case, it's 4 or anything greater than 4. So that's going to be the x for the first example. So that being said, you're going to put a bracket because 4 is included. And I put the bracket to look on the right, to face the right side of 4, because it's greater. So if it's greater, the bracket should look on the right side of the number that is indicated. And then now all the numbers here are going to be in this solution because it's 4. I put the bracket because it's included. And anything greater than 4, that means anything on the right side of 4. In the interval notation, since it goes indefinitely, this arrow indicates that this solution can be anything greater than 4, 1,000, 10,000, and anything that is greater than 4. That means it goes all the way to infinity in the number line. And then to note that positive infinity on the number line. So to note that the right side of the number line is positive infinity, and the left side of the number line is all the way to negative infinity. That means that the smallest number you can ever imagine. And that said, it starts at 4, and including 4, the interval notation would be bracket 4, and it goes all the way to infinity, so infinity positive. And on infinity, it's always parenthesis, because infinity is never included. If it's not included, you use parentheses. So infinity, negative or positive, is never included because they're not even numbers. So we say that it's parentheses on infinity every time. Let's look at the second example. The second example, that is x less than 6. 6 is still greater than 0. That means it's going to be on the right side of 0. Now, it's less than, and also it does not have the equal sign. So not having the equal sign will mean that you're going to need parentheses, and less than, that means left side of 6. So the parenthesis will look on the left because it's less than. Less than is left. And then you need to shade the left part of the number line starting at 6, but we know 6 is not included because it's negative infinity. Because it's less than. It doesn't have the equal sign. And then now when you look at this shaded part of the number line, it goes from left to right. It's always going to be from left to right. That's why we started at 4 to positive infinity. In this case, it's going to be from left to right. You go this way, and that means from the smallest to the highest. So it's going to take values from negative infinity all the way to 6, but 6 is not included. So interval notation, open parenthesis, negative infinity, and then 6, close parentheses. Example number 3, x is less than or equal negative 2. So x is less than or equal negative 2 means that you're gonna put negative 2, it's on the right side. It's on the left side of 0. So left side of 0, negative 2. And then it's greater than, it's less than, x is less than, it's always x. So you need to compare the variable on the left. Keep your variable always on the left. So x less than negative 2. With its it has the equal sign, you're gonna use bracket, but it looks on the left because it's less than. And now you shade from negative 2, it goes all the way to negative infinity. And then you always read the number line from left to right. So that's going to be parenthesis negative infinity, and then negative 2, bracket for the interval notation. So that's this for how you write inequalities into number line, you graph it, or you write it in interval notation. So now let's look at how we can transform inequality. We can transform an interval to inequality. Write as an inequality this interval. So this interval starts from negative infinity. That means the variable is less than. The other boundary, the other boundary is bracket. That means it's going to be less than or equal -8. So for this one, it starts at 5. So with a bracket 5, that means, and then it goes all the way to positive infinity. So that means the variable x would be greater than the number, but it's also equal because the number has a bracket, greater than or equal 5. So you start from the left to right. So it's 5. The smallest number of this set is 5, and it goes to the right to positive infinity. So it starts at 5, and it takes all the numbers greater than 5, including 5 because of the bracket. In this case, number 6, it gives me a parenthesis from -2, and it goes all the way to positive infinity. That means it goes to the right, but it does start at -2 with a parenthesis. That means there will be no equal sign. So x is greater than -2. Over here, you have a bracket -10 to positive infinity. It goes to the right. So that means the variable x would be greater or equal to -10 because it takes all numbers that are larger than -10. With the bracket, it tells me that -10 is also included. In this case, it takes numbers, because you see negative infinity, it takes only numbers that are smaller than 6, not including 6. So it's going to be the variable that is less than, because it takes numbers that are smaller than 6, smaller than, and not equal, because it doesn't have a bracket, not equal 6. We have two different notation for an interval. First, we have the set notation. The set notation is when the interval is given as all the properties that the numbers verify. So basically, the set notation is setting the properties of all the numbers in the interval. For example, it's the set of x such that, just an example, x is greater or equal to 2. That means it defines the properties of these elements in this set. So it's all of the x numbers that are real, of course, and that are greater or equal to the number 2. And then obviously, as we see in the previous sequence of video, we have the interval notation where you have a number you start and a number you finish, for example, from 2 to, I don't know, positive infinity, or another number, so positive infinity. So that means this interval never stops. And you saw the interval with parentheses when the values are not included, A, B. So both A and B are not included. A, B, in this case, B is included. That means the value B is part of the interval. A, B, in this case, B is not included. A is included. And AB, both of them, A and B, are included. It's very important that the farthest left number, to start from the farthest left number and end with the farthest right number. So always from the left to the right. From the farthest left, sometimes it's not a number, it's a infinity. If it's not a number, that means it never ends on the left. So it's from infinity, from the farthest left number to the farthest left right number, so to the farthest right number. And you already know how to graph. So if 0 is the center, -2 will be on the left. And it's all the numbers that are less than -2. So it'll be an open circle or a parenthesis open to the left. And then shade all the left part of the number line from -infinity to -2, because the numbers are all the x values that are less than -2. Another case, 0 is the center of the number line. -2 still on the left. This case, you have the equal sign. You can have a closed circle, or you put a bracket. Since it's left, the bracket, since it's less, the bracket opens to the left of -2, and then you shade from -infinity to the number -2, because that's where it starts. Now let's see how we solve inequalities using these properties. It says, solve the inequality, write your solution in set and interval notation, but I would add to graph it on the number line. Then graph it. So let's start with writing 3x minus 4 is greater than 8. Add 4 on both sides to isolate x. So that's 3x greater than or equal to 12. Divide by 3. So x is greater than or equal to 4. So set notation. Is the set of x such that x is greater than or equal 4. That's it. And then the interval notation. The interval notation, it's x all the set of numbers in this interval are represented by x, and verifies the property that they are greater, larger, or equal 5. So that means it's going to be from 4 with a bracket because of the equal sign 4 is included. So we put bracket to tell the reader that 4 is part of the set. From 4 goes all the way to infinity because it never stops. And then on the number line, as the graph start at 0, 4 will be on the right. It's a bracket or a closed circle. And then goes all the way to infinity because it starts at 4 and never stops. So goes to infinity. So we shade everything to the right of 4. Next problem, solve. We're gonna represent in the number line, then graph. So negative 5x plus 8 less than or equal to 10. We can add 8 on both sides, or subtract. Let's subtract 8 on both sides. Let me see this one if it's correct. Yes. So let's subtract 8 on both sides. So that's negative 5x less than or equal to. Then we can divide by negative 5, which would obviously flip the sign of the inequality, because dividing or multiplying by negative number flips the direction of the inequality sign. Means if it's less than or equal, becomes greater than or equal. If it's greater than or equal, it flips to less than or equal. In this case, it's going to flip to greater than or equal to negative 2 over 5. And x is greater than or equal to this number. Now we're going to write it as a set notation. Set notation is the set of x such that x is greater than or equal to negative 2/5. The D-interval notation will be a bracket, of course. Bracket because it's inequality and looks to the right. So we start with the bracket. In this inequality has equal sign too. So that's negative 2/5 to infinity. Parenthesis always on infinity. And then last interval graph. To graph the inequality, we need the number line. Center 0. Negative 2/5 is negative, so I put it on the left side. It's a closed circle because it's negative, because it's greater than, and then greater than bracket looks to the right. It's either bracket or closed circle. And then negative 2/5, that's the number. And you can shade the left side, the right side, because it's greater than the right side of the number. Now when you have fraction, it's required that you clear the fraction 2 and 8. So 8 is the least common denominator. Let's multiply everything by 8. So that's negative x plus 2 over 2 minus 1 minus 7 x over 8 we multiply by 8 because we want to cancel the fraction, less than -7. If you multiply one side by a number, you should multiply both sides by the same number. So we multiply by 8. Then 8 divided by 2 is 4. And then the 4, we multiply the numerator -x plus 2. So that's 4, -4x plus 8. And then minus 8 divided by 8 is 1. Minus 1. That multiplies 1 minus 7x less than -7 less than -7 times 8. -7 times 8 is -7 times 8 is 56. So we're going to continue with distributing we're going to distribute the parenthesis -1 in the parenthesis. But we need a negative here, so that's negative. So -4x plus 8 minus 1 plus 7x less than -56. So we should combine like terms. -4x plus 7x is positive 3x. And then 8 minus 1 is plus 7 less than -56. We subtract 7 on both sides. That's 3x less than 63, negative. And then we divide by 3 to get x less than 21 negative. So we will do the same thing we did earlier. Give the set notation. Give the interval notation. And give the graph on the number line. So the set notation is the set of x, such as x is less than -21. The interval notation starts from -infinity because it's less, and from -infinity you always keep parentheses to -1, and it doesn't have the equal sign, so it's parenthesis on -21. -21 will be on the left of 0, so -21 will be an open circle, obviously, and then or parenthesis. It can be either parenthesis or open circle, and then you're going to make sure you shade the left side because it's less than. So that's going to be for any inequalities that have, any inequalities that have one inequality sign. For this one here, we're going to solve compound inequalities. Compound inequalities is when you have to solve a inequality that has more than one inequality sign. So basically for this one, they say graph it, write using set interval, set notation, and interval notation. So the same thing we've been doing in the previous problems, but in this case we're going to do it for compound inequality. So let me copy this so we can use the same thing that will allow us to go quicker. So that is this. They want me to give interval set notation. They want me to give the set notation, the interval notation, and then the graph. So we start at 0, obviously. I mean, we know 0 is the center. Let's start with the set notation. X is between 3 and 5, but since this one is an inequality with no equal sign, or we just have to write it with the condition. So that's the set of X, such as 3 less than X and X less than or equal to 5. That's it for the set notation. That's the interval notation. The interval notation, you need to look at this side, the first side, the leftmost side, if it's a less than. So it's a less than, so that means I'm going to say that it starts with a parenthesis because it has no equal for the 3, comma. This one is less than or equal. The second one is less than or equal. That means the 5 actually is going to have a bracket. Next problem. Obviously, they asked me the same question to write the set and the interval notation. They didn't ask me to graph it. But first, we need to solve it. So in order to solve it, we need to start by removing the fraction. To do that, let's multiply everything by the bottom of this fraction. So 5. 5 multiplies everything. So that's 5 times 1, 5. Less than or equal to 5 times 4/5. Cancel 5, so that's just 4x. Plus 5 times 10, 50. Less than or equal to 5 times 3, 15. And then now we can go ahead and subtract 50 on both sides because we want to isolate the x right in between the inequalities. Subtract 50 on both sides. So that is negative 45 less than or equal to 4x less than or equal to negative 35. And then now we can divide by 4 in order to have x by itself inside of the inequalities. Divide by 4. So 45 divided by 4 is 11.5. 11.25. Less than or equal to x less than or equal, actually it's negative 11.25, and then less than or equal to negative 35 divided by 4, it equals negative 8.75. So the set notation is going to be the set notation is the set of x such as this. And the interval notation is bracket negative 11.25 to negative 8.75 with a bracket because both of them have equal sign.